Steven, what's going on?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Monday, 4:15 p.m. Almost almost through with the day, but yeah, I feel like it's one of those typical Mondays. How about for you?
Yeah, same. I Mondays are like this weird feeling of not not getting a lot done, but feeling like I'm not getting anything done either. And it's because like a lot of my meeting rhythms with my team are on Mondays, and so it's like planning everything. So it's like I pile on all my actions for the week are just getting overloaded.
Yeah, no,
So yeah.
I was exhausted this morning. I just had a really long weekend, had a bunch of friends in town that I hadn't seen in years. And, I woke up a little bit later than normal today and I went to a coffee shop and got some work done. But as I was leaving, I looked over and my wife was in her pajamas, just cranking out work on the couch, which prompted me to ask her, "Do you enjoy sitting on the couch in your pajamas doing work?" And she was like, "Yeah, like why not? I'm comfortable." And this is my segue into the first topic of today. So last week, Malcolm Gladwell stirred up a bunch of I don't know if you want to call it controversy, but he got a big reaction by I think he said something like, if you're just sitting in your pajamas in your bedroom, is that the work life that you want to live? What have you reduced your life to? So, what are your thoughts?
Well,
And I know I just mixed up the order of what we're going into, but I just said screw it.
yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I'm ready to run with it. So, Malcolm Gladwell is one of those thought leaders, right?
Yeah.
I think he wrote The Tipping Point, and I forget. There are a lot of them, but to
Like
me,
how to
they're
talk to
kind of
strangers or something like that.
they're kind of like the same book.
Yeah.
He takes an angle, and it's interesting. And I always respected kind of his points of view, and he's always had really interesting things to say. And this I felt was just such a surprise. I honestly, this was a blind spot for me as it relates to Malcolm Gladwell, like what his take on things.
Yeah.
So I just was really surprised that he would, to the quote was, yeah, if you're just sitting in your pajamas in your bedroom, is that the work life you want to live? And I love that Tori was like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
And and for me, sorry, I interrupted you,
no,
but
no,
for
you're good.
me, I I think that my view is I get so much more done at work because I'm not waiting till I'm dressed. Like it's not even about that. Like it's about being able to maximize the flow and the time that I
Mm-hmm.
have to get work done. And so I think it's just crazy. I feel like they must have caught Malcolm Gladwell on a bad day, or who knows, like maybe he apparently. So I dug into this over the weekend,
Yeah.
knowing that we were going to talk about it today. And I didn't realize that he actually like has his own
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. Pushkin Industries.
And so who knows, maybe they're struggling. And maybe his answer to that is everyone needs to conform to my work style so that we can get back to where I think we need to be.
Yeah.
And
Well, so what's
honestly,
interesting is what he
go
actually
ahead.
said was, I think maybe it was like CNBC or somebody followed up with him and he clarified what he meant, how remote work is okay if you're doing work that doesn't require collaboration, but in his opinion, based off of his experience with co-founding Pushkin Industries in the past couple of years, he's noticed that the people that go into the office tend to be more collaborative and creative, and they seem to have more energy. So I think to your point, like as the CEO, I feel like this is probably something that a lot of CEOs think, whether or not it's true. Like maybe it's
Yeah,
just like they
that's
feel
right.
more, they feel reassured seeing people in the office doing work.
Look, I I know based on my experience that it is scary to let go of control and to allow the entire company to work in a way that you personally are not wired to work. That has happened to me from the beginning of the pandemic. Actually, before then, like I remember, Workify employees 5 years ago, like really trying to push the envelope on certain things. And I like even Slack, I was a late adopter to Slack. It was a joke at the company, like, ha ha ha. Yeah, if you're everyone else, Slack it. If you're Steven, email or text him. And and so I get it. Like I hung on to these old ways of working because that's how I grew up. That's how I learned to be efficient and productive. And so to let go of that, I think it's a control thing. It's a control thing for these leaders because even his clarification, I'm not buying. Like, so you're saying, Malcolm, that there aren't creative people at GitLab. So
Yeah.
you're saying, Malcolm Gladwell, there aren't creative or collaborative people working at Drift. Like it's just like we both know the answer to that. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's like something else has to be going on here. And maybe this is like a little microcosm of a broader leadership problem, disconnect between leadership and and the employees at the company.
Yeah. Yeah. Like while I don't completely disagree with what he's saying, for me, I personally don't work best when I'm sitting in my pajamas all day. But for some people, that might be they're like in the flow zone, like whenever they're just sitting there cranking out work on the couch. But I keep going back to the idea of choice, to your point, and about giving the employee the choice and control over where they want to work. And I can't remember what Sierra called it for Dashlane, like employee choice led hybrid or something. But basically, yeah, you're just letting people get their work done however they want. For me, it's hitting a coffee shop in the morning for a few hours, getting like my most important tasks done, and then taking calls from our home office. For others, it's going into the office 100%. It really just depends on the individual. And I think that's the biggest thing that he's missing. Like,
Yeah.
he's sort of inserting his point of view and thinks that everybody should conform to how he works best.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how he feels as though offices do matter. And we've talked about that on the Modern People Leader, where it's not about whether you should spend time in the office or not. It is how you're spending your time in the office. And so, these general statements like I'm convinced that offices do matter for collaborative and creative work. I I don't think it's that simplistic is the issue, right? And
Yeah.
in my opinion, it's hard to kind of police, when is the work actually collaborative and when is it just us working together in a location?
Yeah.
Because if it's just us working together in a location and we're not really collaborating, then I don't see the merits of the argument personally. And to your point, a lot of creative people need peace and quiet to tap into their creativity, not noise and chaos and chit chat and water cooler talk. Like having re-implemented some in office time, so we go into the office every Tuesday. And what I my biggest knock on in office is the those days I can't fit in as much work because I'm fitting in social time. And guess
Yeah.
what, social time is really really important. And
Yeah.
so I'm not saying I shouldn't do that, but the reality is, and when I reflect on Tuesdays, like, did I get everything done that I wanted to? Like, usually the answer is no. And it's because, I'm putting that aside, intentionally so that
Yeah.
I can connect with my employees.
Yeah. It's funny. We were sitting there in that co-working space last week, and I had almost the exact same thought as I was leaving. Actually, I was like, man, I didn't really get as much work as I was hoping to get done today, but it sure was nice, seeing Steven in the office, getting to kind of just chat and that water cooler talk, seeing a couple of other people that I hadn't seen in years. so yeah, there's a trade-off. It's like you go into the office, you're gonna get you're gonna be able to connect with your coworkers more, but or even people that are just working in the same space as you if you're going to a WeWork, but you might not get as much work done, and that's
Yeah.
okay because it's a different
Yeah.
purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting because I think that leaders that are taking this Malcolm Gladwell point of view, which is either resisting this trend that's not going away,
Yeah,
or taking a a I centric view. Like, I would rather work together in the office. So I think, so now we're going to do what I think is right. It's this point of view that is leading to this second trend that I want to talk about, which is apparently going viral on TikTok. It's called quiet quitting. Have you heard of this?
no, I haven't.
Yeah. So I hadn't heard of it either. And when I dug in, I was like, oh my God. I know this wasn't on the agenda to talk about today, but it popped up over the weekend. And as we were talking, I just kept thinking about this trend where essentially Gen Z, well, and I can't pick on Gen Z, but it's a trend within the Gen Z, employee worker community to ditch hustle culture to avoid burnout. And it's essentially, the quiet quitting is not going above and beyond what is, asked for your, of you in your day-to-day job, and just essentially doing the bare minimum. Back in the day, we called that collecting paychecks. So I'm not here to
So it's just
innovate. I'm just,
rebranded.
yeah, I think this has been for sure rebranded. Um, and it's just like the fact that it's being TikToked and 500,000 people have viewed this video. It's telling. It's telling of
Yeah,
where we are and how big of a disconnect. Because I could see people you know quiet quitting because they're being forced to go into the office and they're wasting all this time, and they're being told to go into the office for reasons that aren't actually panning out.
yeah,
And I think that is like part of, like, we have extreme behavior on one side, which is, oh, well, leaders and executives are trying to force these kind of rules and these transitions back to office based work. And then we're seeing extreme behavior on the other side, on the employee side, particularly younger generations that are like, oh yeah, well, if we have to do that, then I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm just going to collect my paycheck and get on with my life.
yeah. I actually have a buddy who has been um, unhappy with his work situation for a good amount of time, and I think that
But what
they
does that mean in the modern workplace? What's a good amount of time?
ooh, I mean, at least like the
A
last 5 or
year?
6 months, but
Okay.
every time we
6 months.
catch up on his work situation, it's the same story. They've been promising him a promotion for the past 6 to 10 months. He's been there for about 2 years, and he feels like he's sort of stagnated, and there's not really any room for growth anymore there. And every month in his one-on-ones with his boss, he's bringing up, so like, what about that promotion? Like, it's coming, trust me, just one more month. And they've been saying this every single month. So I think he's gotten to the point where in the past 4 or 5 weeks, he's quiet quit. And it's not like uncommon for it to be a Wednesday at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and he's just at Top Golf, you know, hitting
Wow.
golf balls. I don't want to out this friend, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think he's gotten to the point where he's like, well, if they don't have me in their best interest, then like, why should I go above and beyond for them?
Wow. Yeah. And to me, this just would like never have been an option. Like, this would have been a sign that I need to leave my job. Like,
Yeah,
what's the point of me staying here? Um, except it's people aren't, what's interesting to me is that that's not the initial response. The initial response for the people that are quiet quitting is, rather than seek out a better alternative for myself, like, I'm gonna cut back on what I do.
yeah. So there's been a lot of layoffs
Yeah.
in the past couple months, or 4 or 5 months. And I was actually looking at the number of people that have been laid off in 2022. Any
Yeah. How
guess
many?
on? I'll let you guess first.
Yeah. I want to say it's got to be hundreds of thousands at this point with companies like, Microsoft. I know there's some big guys out there. My guess is 200,000.
Okay, so the number that I saw, and this
Mind you,
could be,
I have no reference point, so it could be in the
yeah,
millions, but I'm not really. I'm just thinking about kind of tech workers, like the ones that we hear
yeah.
about on LinkedIn.
So according to layoffs.fyi, there have been 70,000 layoffs in 2022.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah,
less,
it's a lot, but I thought
and
it
those
would
are
be
the
more.
public. Those are the publicly reported. So it
Yeah,
could be more.
and I guess since we're talking about stuff that went viral on LinkedIn or social media last week, did you see the crying CEO post?
No.
No? Okay. On one hand, like I kind of feel bad for this guy. So it's this guy named Braden Wallachie, and he's the CEO of this company called Hypersocial. It's a small marketing startup, and he posted this post on LinkedIn, and it's a photo of him crying, and it's like a close up of his face, and it's this really long post about how this was the worst week of his life. He had to lay off a few people on the team, and how it was his fault. But nowhere in the post does he include anything about how he plans to support these people in their transition, or like offering up a plan of action for these people. And it led to a ton of backlash on LinkedIn, where people were
Mm.
calling him a narcissist and tone deaf. And it led to this larger conversation around the fact that it's typically the average worker that's suffering in these situations. When there's decisions that are being made, like, big strategic decisions that are being made by a company, by the executives, that eventually lead to, them underperforming and them having to lay people off. But it's never, the CEO that's having to suffer. It's the average worker. So I just thought that was I don't know. I didn't really like all of the um like copycat posts that people were putting out for some quick laughs. Like I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of messed up. But
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely got a pretty big reaction from that post.
I mean, yeah. It's like
He was being
I
accused of having crocodile tears, basically.
right, right. It's like my landlord raising rent by like 75% and then complaining to me how hard it is to manage his 62 properties that he owns.
In
It's
Austin.
like in Austin, in this one neighborhood that
Yeah.
he's essentially taking control of the market of the pricing. And so I get it. And I think the other thing is I'm not sure people know how to use LinkedIn these days. I feel like LinkedIn has changed. We both, are big fans of Refine Labs, and Chris Walker, who's a marketing thought leader we've had on the show. We love what they do so much that we've had multiple Refine Labs employees on our show. But there was a comment on a post today on LinkedIn, and one of the things that one of the points he made was like the LinkedIn is
Algorithm.
changing their algorithm, and so like the type, which impacts the types of posts that are the people are posting. And all of this, like, I guess, is in the last like 12 months. And I know he's talking about the marketing angle, but I do feel like these changes are to promote behaviors, right? And I don't think people understand the behaviors that they should be exhibiting on like LinkedIn. And so he may have been trying to like get who knows what, get
Yeah.
traction, gain an audience. I don't know what he was thinking, but I think that there's some things that are off limits. We should do a show about what you should not do as a people leader on LinkedIn, just because I
Yeah.
see some crazy things all the time. But I think there's some truth to the narcissism. I think that's a little extreme. Like, poor guy. I mean, it having had to let people go, I can say firsthand that it has an impact on my mental health. It
Yeah.
is not good. Having people that rely on you, that you personally have convinced to stay at the company, that are relying on payroll. It's just really, really hard. And so I can empathize with the guy.
Yeah.
But there is truth to the fact that CEOs and the executives, the people that probably have the biggest cushion to absorb, not having a job or not having a source of income, are usually not the ones impacted. And
Yeah.
like today, I don't know if you saw the news. It's been a busy news week
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely has.
as we talk through everything. But Adam Newen, the former
Oh, I
CEO of
saw that
WeWork, just closed an insane round of funding,
with
300
Andreessen.
million. Yeah, but on a $1 billion valuation when there's no product that even exists. And here we are rewarding an individual who has destroyed, shareholder value. He has destroyed careers, etc. Like, if there's one person who feels like it should not be continuing to benefit from, his stature in the industry, feels like that's the kind of guy. But I think that's what makes it hard. The public has a short leash, or I guess they're quick to react, particularly with people in a position of power, particularly with CEOs on a site like LinkedIn. And so, yeah, poor guy. Like I empathize. I have a lot of empathy for him on one hand, but yeah, you should have talked to your to your PR people before you did that.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like this is a good transition into us kind of talking about the top three takeaways from the last, let's call it 5, 6 episodes. We've
Yeah,
had
because it's
some,
been a while since we've
yeah,
done
yeah, yeah.
this.
And, we've had some really great guests on. And I feel like there are a few themes that have sort of emerged out of these conversations. And one of them is that HR leaders are starting to think about recession proofing.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, you
Well,
mentioned
what's
this.
crazy is I think our last one-on-one was around recession, talking about the
Yeah.
storm clouds brewing and what was coming.
I
And
should have
then
posted it, but
literally,
it turned into us just hanging out for an hour and a half.
sometimes that happens. Sometimes that
Yeah.
happens, guys. Daniel and I
Yeah.
will just talk and we're like, you know what? Maybe we'll just keep that one to us.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then literally within like two or three recordings, we were talking about it on the show with guests. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that with for me, the recession proofing conversation, has picked up steam even with our most recent. I don't know if we're going to get as recent as Sierra, but
Yeah.
it's definitely within the realm of focus right now.
Yeah.
And so what I guess at what point did you realize, like, oh wow, this is a thing? What was a particular speaker that brought it up?
Well, so I think when we spoke with Jackson Lynch, we didn't talk about it during the episode, but when he hopped on to join the call, I think we were just like, shooting the shit for 10, 15 minutes before we started recording. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was something that was top of mind for him that we
Yeah.
didn't actually discuss in the episode. And maybe we did. I should probably go and take a look at the show notes, but I think that was the first conversation that we had where we were alluding to this looming recession, what we were calling it at the time. Fast forward about a month or however long it was, we then spoke with Beth Steinberg from Chime, and she talked about how she had been through several downturns as a people leader, and she's concerned but not panicked. And I think her big note for HR leaders out there is that it's really important to communicate more than you normally would during these
Mm-hmm.
times of uncertainty. And I think she talked about this neuroscience model called the SCARF model that she uses.
Oh
And it
yeah.
stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And how a lot of people are triggered by a lack of certainty. And when you feel uncertain, you're not going to do as good a job at your job as you would if you had that certainty. And again, she just stressed the fact that people leaders should over communicate and be honest about where they're at. And I think that this sentiment was echoed when we spoke with Sierra. I feel like she said
Mm-hmm.
something very similar, that, you know, the best thing you can do as an HR leader is to over communicate. Let them know that all parties are being heard, whether it's the board or it's the leadership team or it's, frontline managers, or, it's the most junior employee in the company. Like, you have to listen to all of these different perspectives and then communicate back to everybody. Hey, we hear you. Here's what's going on, and just be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, I think that is hopefully people were taking notes in that in that portion of the conversation, because she gave a lot of good nuggets. And I think, you know, the the point around communication. Well, first, I thought the scarf model was really, really a great framework, a great way of looking at it. But the typically, in my experience, in these sorts of times when it's still uncertain, like what exactly is going to happen, leaders start to communicate less. They go against what essentially Beth and Sierra were saying that you should do. And usually it's because you don't want to communicate something too soon,
Yeah.
and then be left kind of holding that. And the reality is there's a way that you can communicate and make it clear that we still don't have all the answers. We still don't know exactly, to what degree, the global economy is going to slow down, or, insert whatever metrics that you're tracking. And as a result, the plan could change. But as of right now, I think everyone knows there's a plan, or there should be a plan, right? That someone is working toward. And so I think there's some great feedback in those conversations in terms of handling these conversations, and how to kind of move forward. But for me,
Yeah.
you know, keeping a sense of trust is a key with your employees, and them feeling like you're being open and communicative, I think is clutch in these times.
Yeah. And something else that they both said. So I want to say that Beth Steinberg said something like, layoffs are a failure of management. And then Sierra said that, a lot of investors will talk about healthy layoffs, and how she basically cringes when she hears the words healthy and layoffs used together. And basically just try to exhaust all of your other options before deciding to lay people off. And I know that's easier said than done, because I don't know. I imagine it's tough. Like, if your company is not doing well and you've explored all the other options, sometimes it has to be done. So maybe it is a bit harsh to say it's a management failure. Um, but yeah, that I think they both said something
Yeah, and
to
I
that
think it
same
was
effect.
Beth that mentioned how headcount has become this vanity metric.
Yes, exactly.
And
She did say that.
so companies have been so focused on hiring and bringing on
Getting their
all
head
the
count up
product people and
instead of
bringing,
having responsible growth. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that is the failure in the situations where that is happening. That is the failure. And that's what's so hard to talk about,
Yeah.
because how do you explain, well, wait a second, last quarter you told us we were expanding our sales team and building out, blah, 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 this continued growth story. And now you're saying we're not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's changed? And the reality is a lot has changed. The economic, situation has changed pretty dramatically, at least in the form of inflation, if we, were to boil it down to one thing. But
Yeah.
there's more than that. And so I think that's where the communication is key.
Yeah.
And going back to the conversation with Jackson, what came, what if I were, part of a large executive team and we were going through these exercises, I would know that I have a good HR leader if, you know, there was willingness to like really examine the decisions we had made. And I was being pushed to answer some of these tough questions. And I would know that I have the right person because that would mean that we are preparing to talk about it. Like first we've got to examine it and come to terms with like what, you know, what we got wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that will, honesty and authenticity in communicating these tough messages is key.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that Jackson mentioned is over the last few years, in his view, that there still is too much variability in the job of a HR/people
Yeah.
leader. And I think even more specifically, he mentioned how because of the high demand in bringing on good people leadership, companies have brought on people that may not have the experience that they need to be in those roles.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at the two of those things combined, I would be really, really worried for some of the companies out there. Because what I am looking for in people leader is someone who can shoot straight and is gonna really serve as the voice of our people and the advocate for our people. And not everyone, it's an uncomfortable position to be
Yeah.
in these situations. And so I just keep thinking about Jackson's feedback and hoping he's wrong, right? Not because I don't think, he's a smart guy. He's clearly,
Mm-hmm.
he knows what he's talking about, but because of how many companies will be in very difficult situations if he's
Yeah.
right. And I think there's some truth to what he's saying.
And actually, the second theme that I had listed out was the job of the CHRO or chief people officer is really, really hard. And I went back to the Beth Steinberg conversation again, and she talked about why it's so hard to find a good HR leader. And she said it wasn't always a role that was valued in companies. If somebody had a good one, they'd value the role. If not, they'd view HR as a hindrance instead of moving the business forward. And then she said, there's been a great, there's not a great way to develop people leaders over time. And many people have gotten out of the field because they haven't felt like they were valued in organizations. Now that everyone wants to be a people leader, there's a real shortage. The amount of open roles for people leaders right now is stunning. Because the job is incredibly difficult, a lot of people don't want to do it. Therefore, there's a shortage of candidates. So I just thought that was so interesting. Like a lot of people didn't want to continue their careers in the HR people space because it was so difficult. But now, because it's cool to be a people leader, can all of a sudden people want to jump back into it, or companies value it more and they realize the importance of having a good HR leader, but it's really hard to find one.
Yeah. And I think that the only thing that I would insert in there is a qualified people leader, because I think there are a lot of people that want the title
Yeah.
and will take on the job because of for personal accomplishment. I was going to say selfish reasons, but that there are a lot of factors that I think play into that. But I think there are a lot of people out there. Finding qualified people, I think, is the real challenge.
I also loved her definition of a modern people leader. Do you remember that?
I don't. I know.
She
What
said,
does she say?
she said, when people ask her what her job is, she says it's to move the business forward, help the company achieve business goals through the people practices and optimization of people. Need to get people to understand that a modern people leader is extremely tied to the outcomes of the business. People leaders need to measure their success, have a business plan, and have everything else that other business functions would have. And she said the expectations haven't been high enough or clear enough for this role.
I love that
Thought that
also.
was a fire quote.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing quote. And maybe we should we haven't changed our rapid fire questions in a long time, our
That's what I
intro
thought.
questions.
Yeah.
And that would be a cool one because
Like
I would love to get
how do you
everyone's
define a modern
perspective.
people
Yeah.
leader? Yeah. Well,
So
we'll add it to the future outlines.
for changing gears, can we talk about just for a few minutes the fact that we had the global chief people officer at Kraft Heinz.
We're on the
Like
same page, man.
35,000, 40,000 employees globally.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of a pinch me type moment when we were recording that and getting ready for that session.
Yeah, no, same. Um, yeah, great guest. I think I asked her at one point in the interview how many people are at Kraft Heinz, and when she responded 35,000, you're right. It was definitely a pinch me moment. I was like, wow, we have, the people leader for one of the largest companies in the world on our show right now. So that was definitely a proud modern people leader podcast moment for me.
And some of the things that we talked about with Melissa at Kraft Heinz that were the first thing that just was really telling for me is just the culture, the amount of time and energy that they're putting into their cultural transformation.
Yeah.
She may have called it like a leadership transformation. There
So
are
so
a few things going on
yeah, so
at Kraft Heinz.
they have Project Win, which is their version of Project Oxygen. So Google had Project Oxygen, 5-10 years ago, however long ago it was. And the goal of Project Oxygen was to measure the effectiveness of managers across their organization and then figure out like what makes the best managers there. And then once they figured that out, how do we make sure all of our managers have these skills? So they went through that same exercise at Kraft Heinz, and they called it Project Win. In addition, they're calling 2022 the year of the manager. So I think those were two of the things that she mentioned. And then there was something about the movement around learning. I can't remember what she called it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The notes that I took here, that culturally Kraft Heinz is moving from a know-it-all culture
Exactly.
to a learn-it-all culture.
Yes.
Which I think is, for having worked at a large organization with a strong company culture, I think is awesome that they branded it the way they did.
Yeah.
Moving from a know-it-all, I think that's hilarious, and a lot of self-awareness on their part, to a learn-it-all culture.
Yeah.
And that just, I think, will appeal with their talent pipeline in so many different ways. And to hear like actually how they're doing that was really interesting to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it all, like, if you go back to Microsoft, where they got this idea of moving from a learn it all to a know it all culture, I found the original clip from the CEO of Microsoft. His name is escaping me right now, but he talks about how he read the book about having a growth mindset. Do you know which book I'm talking about?
I don't. There's, I
but
feel
it's
like there are a
basically,
lot.
yeah, it's very similar to, I think Steve Cadigan talked about this book on our show. But
Okay.
yeah, the whole moving from a learn it all, or sorry, from a know it all to a learn it all culture all revolves around the idea of having a growth mindset and being more agile. And I thought that was really interesting. And something else that she said that really stuck with me when talking about managers is how, she saw this stat from Gallup about how only 10% of people are naturally wired to be a manager. And like when she read that stat, she was mind blown. She's like, wow, like that's so true. So if 90% of the manager base doesn't have, the soft skills required to be a good manager, we need to do everything in our power to help them, attain these skills. And I think that was another reason why they decided to invest so much in manager training. And I feel like
Yeah.
this is something that other guests we've had have been talking about, right? The idea of needing to better develop their managers, give them more support.
Yeah. And I think they, to kind of take from the Kraft Heinz playbook, I think understanding the attributes of your own, management is smart. Like, let's take stock and look at, what makes a successful manager successful at Kraft Heinz. that made me think about our friend Don Boone over at
Yeah,
Liberty Latin America
they
and the
did the
work he
exact same
did
thing.
last year. Yeah, they
Yep.
actually, took their engagement data and they connected their engagement data with, their workforce analytics data, and they were able to like do some amazing research around the top traits of an effective manager. And so taking stock, I think, is a great starting point. Having the self-awareness to call out where you're strong and where you need to improve, I think is tells you a lot about the culture of a company. And then to bring in external experts to help you define and model like what are the new behaviors that we're looking
Yeah.
for. And I think in their case, they brought in Kathleen Hogan from Microsoft to like literally help them, you know, construct this new approach. I think it's just awesome. And I think, we're going to continue to hear about agile, the factor of agility in the workplace, as something that companies are looking more and more to adopt, or just for that to be a competency that all
Yeah.
managers need to be able to embrace and thrive in. And I
Yeah.
think there's a long way to go in general. And so I can only imagine for a company like Kraft Heinz, these larger enterprise companies, change is hard.
Yeah.
Change takes time.
Yeah. And even companies that are smaller, like Zora, we had Laura Robley and Valerie Jackson on, and they were talking about how they were trying to rewrite the leadership playbook at Zora, and how one of the things that they were going to do as a part of this was host a leadership summit for all of their VP plus employees to really get them excited about this new movement that they're creating, and this, the new definition of a leader at Zora. Um, so it seems like this is something that a lot of companies are focused on, small, medium-sized companies, and then companies as big as Kraft Heinz. I guess it just gets a lot harder to do it whenever you're at that scale.
Yeah, at that size, that's where the ability to scale these programs, or even the design of the programs themselves, needs to be scalable. I
Yeah.
think that's the difference. What I love about the Zora story is, um, how it was one of our only joint modern people leaders. I think we've done a few of them, but not a lot. I can count them on one hand. I'm pretty sure the number of
Yeah.
times where we've had
Zora,
multiple
Refine
guests.
Labs. I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
And so, in the case of Zora, I think having their Valerie, the chief diversity officer, and Laura, the CHRO, as two kind of key change agents in the organization is a secret weapon for them, because you could just tell the dynamic from our prep call with them, the energy, the enthusiasm, the way that they play off each other,
Yeah.
conversationally. I can just see how they really, and I don't think there's a right model for, there's a silver bullet in terms of there being a single model that works for all companies, but clearly they found an approach that is really serving them well, because having the two of them as kind of the change agents, I think that's huge. Having
Yeah.
two C-level executives that are like, yes, we need to change the way we lead at this company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember which one of them said it, but they talked about how being a people leader can be really isolating. So the fact that they had two people at the company that eat, sleep, and breathe all things people just made it a lot better. They always had somebody sitting at the, executive table with them that, you know, is thinking about these things, right? And I think they also talked about, obviously, like, in order for that to happen, you have to have a CEO that really gets it. So it sounds like they have a CEO that's also their biggest advocate. So I'm sure that helps.
Yeah, so much comes down to the CEO. I mean, this is the whole point of Jackson's episode, right? The way
Yeah.
you define it, I think Beth, to a lesser extent, the way that you define the role of a people leader comes down to the CEO or the owners, right? The CEO's boss. And I forget someone, one of our recent guests also said, whenever there's a change in CEO, the HR leader is usually the first to go. It's either like, and that's either because the, private equity or the new owners are bringing in their regime, or because the new CEO just has his own definition and his own view of HR.
Yeah.
So interesting.
All right, Steven. So we're like 40 minutes into this, and I'm just now realizing we never did good news stories. Should we fit that in here at the back end instead?
Yeah. Let's do it, because I think we got through everything we wanted to talk about. And so for me, good news this week is today in Austin is the first day of school starting. And I guess it's good news, bad news. Like the summer
Party
is
time
great,
for parents now.
for sure. Like parents are like, thank God school is starting so I can get some structure back in my life.
Yeah.
Get the kids down early. So yeah, Astrid is 12. She's going into 7th grade, and Cora.
Wow.
And so she's going into 5th grade, her last year of elementary school. So that's exciting.
Man, 7th grade. I feel like those middle school years are rough.
They're not good. They're not good. And I wish I had some good news
as a parent,
like high
and
school,
as a kid.
I wish I had good news for them that high school, it gets a lot better, but
yeah,
it's rough in a different way. High school. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting times in the Huerta household. So
I'm sure it'll be fun too.
More gray hairs are coming.
So
That's for sure.
Yeah, I got a bunch of them. If you can see them, probably not. But anyways, my good news. So I had a bunch of friends in town this weekend, and a few of them I hadn't seen in 3 years, like pre-pandemic. So it was really nice getting to catch up with them. And yeah, it's always great when you can see somebody after a few years and feel like you just pick right back up where you left off friendship wise. And there's no awkwardness, it's just like riding a bike. So nice catching up with my friends.
Nice. That explains your exhaustion today, though. So that all checks out.
Yeah. No, yesterday I napped for like 4 hours, and then I got 11 hours of sleep, and I'm still tired.
Nice. Well, on that note, I think we're ready for a wrap up. If you're good, I think I'm good. And I think we covered all the things that I wanted to hit on.
Is it overkill if we one word close it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't have mine ready, so feel free to go if you're ready. I'm going to go with...
Oh, no, you go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a one phrase. And this is really geared toward the CEOs and the leaders of companies out there. And it's my one phrase closes: be better. Just feel like, we can all be better at this leadership thing. What's going on in the world out there?
I like it. All right, mine's not as inspirational, but I was gonna say, and so this has like a double or triple meaning, but these next 12 months are going to be the year of the modern people leader. So I think that, still a huge opportunity for people leaders out there to really step up. I think that, this could have been my good news, but Steve and I now have like a weekly, modern people leader catch up. We're discussing all things modern people leader podcast in addition to our recording of the podcast. And, I feel like big things to come for the show. And then now I'm struggling to think of a triple meaning, but yeah, there's at least a double meaning for what I said.
Nice. I'll take it. And as usual, I will also say that we need to do more of these one-on-ones. They're so much fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy just chatting with you. Hopefully we'll post this one.
This one will for sure.
Okay.
This one will for sure get posted.
And that wasn't a dig. I'm good that the last one didn't, because I'm pretty sure we had the same exact conversation that we had the previous episode. But I'm looking forward to getting this one live, and let's get some more of these under our belt before the
All right,
year
man.
wraps up.
Well, have a good week.
You too.
I'll probably
We'll
see you
talk soon.
tomorrow. All right,
Yeah.
bye.
See you tomorrow.